So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now beginning with the plenary. In the plenary, we will debate the main topic of our conference, climate energy management. I would like to ask you something. In your materials, in your folders, you will also find questionnaires. These questionnaires serve as a collecting board for your questions, and at the end of each section we will try to find answers to your questions put on those questionnaires, and if we do not manage that, we will do that in the end. And the answers will be included in the conclusions of this conference. That is the procedure we adopted last year, and this is how we will proceed this year. A second thing, I would also like to ask you, the panelists, and I will introduce you in a second, I would like to ask you to speak with a natural pace, because we have interpreters with us today, just as we do every year. They are trying to do their best, and the interpreters are saying hello to the audience and to the panelists. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. We do need encouragement for this difficult task. Who are the panelists? Einari Kisel from ECHO London, our friend, long-term friend, Jean-Michel Glachant, who is always a great speaker, has great contributions. Then Professor Péter Kaderják from Budapest. In brief, I can say that Professor Kaderják is someone who has an extraordinary team at the University of Budapest for the market analysis and for energy analysis in general. Then we have Professor Galkina from Moscow, from the Russian Academy of Arts and Science. She is an expert in the analysis of gas and oil sectors. And again with us, she is here with us again, and she will provide us with information that is interesting for all of us. Then Mr. Zoran from the Ministry of the Environment. He is the State Secretary, and he used to work at the representative office in Brussels. And he is also authorized, or was vested with the negotiating role on behalf of Slovenia at COP21 in Paris. Zoran, thank you very much for coming. Mr. Danijel Levičar from the Ministry of Infrastructure. We don't need to introduce you, Danijel. We are all familiar with you, with your tasks and roles, but thank you very much for coming again. And not only you, but your team as well, because it seems that every year you bring forth more of your team, and we're very grateful for that. We are quite intimidated by you. Then the First Lady of Slovenian Regulation, Mrs. Duška Godina. She is new in this role, but she is not new in this field. She's been present in this field for the past 11 years, if I am not mistaken. So she is an expert, so to speak. She knows you better than you know her, mind you. And not only that, after all this time, we can regret that the regulated side is not more connected with the unregulated side and vice versa. It is like a disease. So let me proceed. Professor Alojz Poredoš from the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and member of the Energy Council at the Slovenian Academy of Science and Arts. The Slovenian Academy of Science and Arts is often at the background of activities, but it is the spirit of the nation. We often look upon the Slovenian Academy of Science and Arts and we eagerly await its approval. Its debates are always very difficult, but always very constructive. And in the end, last but not least, for the first time since we've been members of the EU Electric, we are very proud that we can host its General Secretary, Mr. Hans ten Berge. Thank you very much for coming here today. I'm very grateful that you have come and brought forth also one of your colleagues who will take part in the next panel, and I hope it's not the last time that we see you in our midst. So first of all, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Einari Kisel, our long-term friend and permanent guest at our conferences. He always speaks about novelties, new findings, new developments. In short, he speaks about things that have been presented after our last conference. And what is also important is that Mr. Kisel usually makes a reflection to our actions, serves as a mirror to our actions. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Frank, and I'm always very pleased to come back here to this very intriguing and interesting discussions, and very glad also to hear about the progress that has happened meanwhile. If you recall, then last year I asked from the audience a simple question: whether you would like to listen, whether you prefer to listen jazz or symphony. And of course, there are different responses from different people, but this is actually the core of a discussion about governance of the energy sector. If you think of the way of governing the energy sector as symphony, where you have a conductor who actually makes the rules, makes all the decisions how to play, or alternatively, you have players of jazz, who everyone he's playing their own tune, but it all has to fit together in order to get the nice melody out of it. So the discussion here on the governance is about who makes decisions on energy sector. And the outcome of these two ways, alternative ways, can be very different. The issues over the governance of the EU energy and climate sector have become more and more acute over this year, having in mind all the decisions that have been made in Paris in COP21, and also the decisions that are coming to the table from the European Commission on the market design. And I think there will be several issues that, from the current perspective, the speakers here will address in much more detail than I will do. But I would like to highlight to you a couple of issues, 3 issues that are coming to the table when we discuss about governance within next 5 to 10 years. And these are the ones which are not so much highlighted in discussions that we are discussing at the moment. Firstly, I will start with the acknowledgement that technology changes that are going on today will make a very big impact also to the economics on the energy sector. If we think of the wider use of renewables with lower and lower marginal cost in the cost basis, it will also drive down the electricity prices. On the positive side, it reflects that there will be less CO2 emissions, we will have lower electricity prices. But if we consider then the notion and the target of the EU on energy efficiency, then with the lower electricity and energy prices, you will find that the economic feasibility of energy efficiency investments will be much lower, which will impact also the frameworks that are set today for energy efficiency investments. We have to reconsider, in principle, how we will incentivize the customers the need to invest in energy efficient solutions. Second observation that I would like to highlight to you is about the change in the car and transportation sector. And I'm very pleased that Commissioner Hulst was here today and spoke about the changes that are going on there. The car industry will have a very big influence to the electricity sector in coming years. And the question is how the governments will manage this transition of the current system to the system where electric vehicles can, in the future, contribute as electricity storage in the system. This kind of new possibility will create a very different logic on the energy policy, where today the perception is that electricity cannot be stored. In 5 years, in 10 years, with a larger penetration of electric vehicles, you will find that electricity storage is a possibility. How this will be reflected then in the governance of and regulations and frameworks of the EU and national policies remains to be a question. Third question that I would like to pose to you, or challenge, would actually be driven from the current logic of the managing of electricity sector. You all know that there is a very hot discussion today about the market design, with a main discussion about how to introduce capacity remuneration mechanisms to the electricity market. The point there is that if you will have capacity remuneration mechanism in one country, and we won't have such kind of mechanisms in another country, we will have actually unequal competition situation between two countries. With the wider integration of the EU markets, we are likely to see electricity trade disputes between the EU countries arising more and more to the table. How to guarantee that the fair framework for the electricity trade will be retained, and it will not negatively impact to the electricity markets in their investment decisions and also in their everyday operation. So these are three challenges that I would see as the upcoming issues and challenges for the governments to deal, not maybe today, but actually in 2-3 years, in order to be faced with them in 5 to 10 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite our friend, our colleague, Jean-Michel Glachant, to impress us with his ideas, as he always does, every year.
Ladies, gentlemen, COP21 and Energy Union, cool or cold? That's the question. That's the question I was asking myself when I have been kidnapped by France yesterday from my lovely Tuscany. Why? Is it cool or cold? Of course it is cool. First, 200 countries entering in an agreement next month till April 17. Second, the target is +2 degrees centigrade with a smile to 1.5. All pledges are voluntary. And the next big conference, the launching, is only in 2018, where we will group all pledges and define the methodology and the rules. Third, the first review of the implementation is only in 2023, and then every year, 2028, etc. Extremely cool. And cool for Energy Union, because we did start well. First, we already have our own internal Energy Union and member state pledge and review from 2020 till 2030. Second, the COP21 target 2 degrees centigrade goes very well with our EU 2020 targets and our 2030 targets. They are all for 2 degrees. Third, but then EU and member states will easily enter the COP21 agreement next month. And then we are already ready for the first world review in 2023, because we only have to stick to our 2030 targets. We can even slip till 2028. We have nothing to do. We are already on track. I'm sorry, guys, but it's not so cool. It's not starting so well. It starts well, but after that, first, target is 2 degrees centigrade. Okay, it goes well with our own targets, but it is said with a smile to 1.5 degrees. It doesn't go with the targets we have. And we have the chairman of the COP21 via the French. What will we do for the launching big conference in 2018? What will we do for the world pledges and the methodology? Will we deny that we have to go to 1.5 degrees? And will we stick to the 2 degrees or not? Second, nobody knows yet how EU and the member states or on EU 2018 pledge and review process, the internal on we have, how this will enter into the world process, we do not know. Third, what will we do for the first review in 2023? Will EU stick to today's targets till 2028 World Conference? If we do that, EU is going to disappear from the world radar screen, because we will slip from today to 2028. If we slip for 12 years at the world level, we will go from the cool to the cold. It's not a grade. Now let's enter into a few energy union challenges. The first we'll see already. We have our own EU Energy Union Pledge and Review 2020, 2030. How will it work? We have no idea. Energy Union is only a policy concept. Energy Union is not a new institution. How will it work? No idea. Let's review 5 challenges for Energy Union. First, typical. Pillar, security of supply gas. If you want details, listen to Florence School podcast. We have 20 of them. The one from von Südow saying that Tusk, the president of the European Council, is key to the energy union, and he did buy energy union in exchange of gas security of supply. Let's be frank. What is the best friend of member states' gas security of supply today? It is the EU internal market. But look at reality. When member states have very high policy for security of supply for gas, they are a very low policy for the internal market for gas. So it does not work. Second, security of supply for power. It's a key of renationalization by member states of European policy. Let's be frank again. What is the best friend of member states' security of supply for power? It is a deep regionalization of grid planning and system operation. But where the reality is, where member states have strong security of supply policy for power, they have very low regionalization policy for power. UK, Germany, France. It does not work. It's not so cool. Let's look at the third, market design. We know that of internal market, by the way, it means erasing all country borders, and power decarbonization. These two pillars have to merge into the same market design. But where are the member states building decarbonization investment on sustainable market frame? Nowhere. It does not work. Fourth, distributed generation and prosumers. Many power systems in the EU are becoming local. That's a fact. But where are the local system frames? Where are the local market operation frames? They are not defined and they are not consistent with the EU internal market. Where is the robust cooperation frame between the TSOs transmission and the DSOs distribution? Where is the unbundling of the DSOs? It does not work. And fifth, digital retail platform. We know that Googleization is entering many industries. Let's say cars. Googleization is entering car driving. We will have driverless electricity cars in 10 years, 12 years. We know that. But where are the driverless energy retail platforms in the energy industry? In my mind, it does not work. To conclude, yes, COP21 is cool. It's a cool reward given to EU decarb policy from the past. For the past, we have a reward. But for tomorrow, many energy unions can still be drafted ahead. Energy union cool till 2030, I would rather say cold and colder. I am an academic. You can look at the journal. I'm very proud of being chief editor. It's the official journal of the biggest international association for energy economics. If you don't like to read journals, I understand you. I also did write 15,000 tweets. It takes 3 seconds to know what I think. If you do not have 3 seconds to think, better to retire and to go fishing. Have a good day.
Hvala lepa. Hvala lepa. Hvala lepa.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, let's go fishing. Thank you very much. Peter, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, dear ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to be here, and I try to be as quick as possible. Frank asked me to make comments on security of energy supply more in the regional context, in the Central and Southeast European context, and also in the context of its climate relations in 10 minutes, including electricity and gas. So this is really challenging. Now, my main comments will be both on electricity sector, then and gas in a regional context. And perhaps the main message of all my comments to you and to the audience here is that when you formulate your energy concept here in Slovenia, which I learned in the morning that you are in the process to do that, my message would be that once you think in a context of more regional cooperation and more regional integration versus national solutions for the energy policy, then this regional cooperation might both support solutions that are more climate friendly as well as more cost efficient. I know that regional cooperation is a very difficult issue to discuss. It is about trust, it is about belief in neighbors. I'm not talking about the overall EU, I talk about it a little bit more on a regional basis. But as my points will illustrate, I'm convinced that once you interconnect countries, when you cooperate across borders, this will bring climate as well as cost efficiency benefits. I'm coming from Hungary, so when I cross the border of Hungary and Slovenia, I just see the last column of the 400 kV line coming from Hungary towards Slovenia. So I think that would be very nice in the coming years to come when the two systems are interconnected and also with gas pipelines interconnected. And I think this would bring benefits also for the cooperation of the two countries. Now to come to electricity sector comments very quickly, security of supply is a very complex issue. Of course, it has a short-term, long-term, and long-term aspects. And on a long-term, short-term, our electricity system is very reliable, but in the longer term, I think fuel mix choice and system adequacy in terms of generation adequacy and network adequacy are the key questions for this country and also for the wider region. Now, how all this looks like when I look at more from the outside, the Central and Southeast European countries. With regard to network adequacy, which means transmission in electricity, I think there is, and it seems that there is a very strong internal network in Western Balkans plus Croatia and Slovenia. Essentially, former Yugoslavia has a very strong, very reliable transmission grid, a very good investment environment for transmission network. More recently, you have very healthy TSOs, financially very healthy, very strong TSOs, credible regulators sitting also at this table, major development plans, projects like the projects of Energy Community Interest Selection Process 1-2. You are soon to be interconnected through Montenegro with Italy with an undersea cable, and follow-up investments are also taking place in countries in Montenegro, Serbia, Bosnia. So I think there is a very good investment environment for transmission in this region, and good and strong transmission is also very important for renewables integration, which is now more closer for the climate. So I think if this region decides to reinforce its interconnections with the wider region, like most to the east with Bulgaria, Serbia, and also the northern interconnections through Hungary and Slovakia, then cross-border cooperation and cross-regional cooperation in the electricity sector could provide an even much improved supply security, power supply security situation for this region. And I think all the conditions are essentially seem to be there to make those few additional investments to the grid that you already have plans about. Now, when you look at generation adequacy, the big question for me, whether you think about in a national context or in a more regional context, because it seems that investment environment in some of the countries here are less favorable for generation, but at the same time, all the post-Yugoslav countries have very ambitious local national generation development plans, sometimes for generation units which are much larger than the market itself that it would supply. I think that would make sense to avoid generation overbuilt based on national self-sufficiency policies. Instead, a more regionally harmonized generation planning or project development would make sense. I know this is very difficult, but it seems to be the case. And this is also related to the fuel mix choice of the region. Now we are talking about COP21, the long-term decarbonization, but now if you look at the actual generation investment plans for this region, you find a large number of coal and gas-based generation investment plans for the region. And at least from the outside, with my colleagues, we see a momentum for a choice between a carbon-intensive path, coal and gas, versus renewables, a heavy development scenario for these countries. Even in a project, we found that the renewables heavy scenario could be feasible under regional integration approach. This would involve mostly, according to national policies, hydro, but also some wind and solar. It is also important to note that flexible renewable resources, mostly hydro, storage hydro, is indeed a competitive advantage, or could be a competitive advantage for this region in a wider European context, because it can also play the role of balancing variable renewables generation in farther away countries to serve as that sort of capability for renewables integration. But of course, to go regional and more decarbon instead of going national based on more carbon would need a very much effort, I think, at regional for cooperation, and it would need careful policy choices, maybe as well as European support to do that. But it seems that if you now opt for the high carbon scenario, then it will last for 30, 40, 50 years. So that's a momentum now. Very quickly, just maybe two more comments on natural gas, which is the more discussed security of supply, I think, topic for the region, for obvious reasons. Why? Because if you look at this map, this just indicates what would happen to gas prices in this region if we experienced a 1 month cut of Russian gas supplies to this to Europe. This risk was much higher last year. Today we have an oversupply of gas, so it seems that this risk is far away. But still, if you just simulate the impact of a potential supply cut, you see that the countries of Central and Southeast Europe with the red are much more impacted than those more faraway countries of Western Europe. So there is a clear and understandable concern here about gas supply security. Now, what can you do to improve this supply security in a cost-efficient and way? I think there are obvious choices, from some of which are indeed climate policy components, namely move away from gas. Again, the Balkans have now a choice whether to go for heavy gas build-up with new pipelines, new related CCGTs built on those gas resources, or go to green immediately. And of course, moving away from gas includes energy efficiency and gas to renewable fuel switch choices. Now, if you go for gas, still you have a problem of moving away from unilateral dependence on Russia. So domestic gas production, LNG sources to the region, implementing physical reverse flow projects and new infrastructures, as well as removing regulatory distortions from the sector, mostly in the form of insufficiently and unjustified high gas transmission tariffs, are key components for improving, I think, gas supply security for the region. And there are some successes from the region when these policies, these combinations of policies of introducing new resources and implementing new infrastructure projects could indeed help countries to get out of unilateral dependence and also to enjoy major price discounts from major suppliers of natural gas, Lithuanian LNG, the Czech project of full reverse flow implementation through the big Brotherhood pipeline, Ukraine complete reverse flow implementation of their gas supplies, and even my country, Hungary, could manage a quite significant restructuring of its gas industry and infrastructure, so that now we enjoy benefits of higher supply security and better gas prices in the country as a combination. So there are good experiences to look at once you go for that. Now, I don't want to go into the details of this, but if you look at the European map, you see that project implementation in gas transmission projects and reverse flow projects are still lagging behind in the southeast European region. Mostly we are lagging behind to implement those reverse flow projects. But of course, if you ask the question what to do with our gas infrastructure in this region, you can say, okay, let's implement all the projects of common interest projects that are on the list of the EU. Now, if you do that, you can demonstrate that many of the countries in this region could benefit a lot in reduced prices and better gas market integration with the European major gas market. But the problem is that if you implement all those projects, this might be very costly. So there is a project now for the region, which is called CSEC project, the Central and Southeast European Energy Cooperation Project, led by the European Commission, for which the aim is really to define the minimum set of gas infrastructures that would be necessary to bring the maximum benefit from gas market integration in this region. And I think this is a very good approach. I would just, my message would be that I think, and I would support very much that kind of approach that this CSEC project took. I mean, to go and define a small, cost-effective set of infrastructures that would help the region. And I think this CSEC work should be further supported and further extended. Now the region should enter into the discussion on how to implement that set of projects that are included in that plan, and it's already ongoing, I think, with LNG projects and other projects. Okay, now of course for all Europe and for the whole gas sector is the big challenge is the proposal now from Russia to build the Nord Stream 2 projects, which could, I think, quite seriously affect also gas market developments in this region. But I think this issue is really far beyond the scope of this very quick introductory remarks. So with this, I would like just to stop. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks a lot for your presentation. I have some very small, tiny question, but I will do this then.
And now we give the floor to our Anna. She will present an overview from a different part of the world, because often we are not familiar with the events and developments in Russia, which is the largest and the most significant energy partner for Europe.
Thank you so much. I am very honored to be here for the second time. This is my pleasure to take a participation in this conference. Thank you. I work at the Energy Research Institute of the Russian Academy of Sciences, and we are engaged for more than 30 years in energy system analysis. We have very complicated modeling complex, and it contains world energy market models, and it is combined with the Russian energy market models. So when I present the results of our calculations, it is about using our huge complex that has been developed for a few, for mostly 30 years. Let's start with the challenges for Russian energy sector, and then I proceed to our responses, and a few words about the climate policy perspectives and our analysis, just a few words. So the challenges for Russian energy sector. I should probably start with pointing that since 2005, the role of energy sector in our national economy has become extremely high. It was not so in 2000, for example, but for the last 10 years, the situation is the following. Energy complex is about 30% of our GDP. It is about half of our budget, the governmental budget, and oil and gas makes up about 2/3 of Russian energy exports. So the situation is quite complex in here, because now Russian economy is in recession, and the only good way of it is that ruble devaluation in 2014, ruble exchange rate was like twice more stronger 2 years ago, and Russian energy complex will make so the cost of producing energy is mainly calculated in rubles. So if we talk about the exchange rate, it happened that dollars, our costs got like twice decreased, and that is why our competitiveness of our energy export is still very high. But yeah, we are still in recession, and it is one of the most important challenges for Russian energy sector. The other one is the oversupply of the internal market. We have very booming production of individual gas producers inside the country. So Gazprom has to decrease its own production because individual gas producers has boomed, and they produce it more because our legislation is that Gazprom has to sell its gas on the internal market on regulated prices, and individual gas producers do that on any price they say it is fair, and they sell their gas at lower prices, and therefore Gazprom is no more a monopoly in the internal market, and it has, as you know, quite a lot of external challenges and problems with export revenues, of course, due to the declined oil price. So the challenges are, they make quite an unfavorable environment for our gas industry. Concerning oil, I must say that that oil production in Russia can be maintaining at the current level. It is kind of 525 million tons, and I'm afraid that it will need huge investment to maintain this level of oil production, because most of our Soviet Union fields have depleted, and that is why we need a new internal taxation and a new industrial structure in Russia, so that new fields of oil and gas can be developed. So both oil and gas industry have challenged, and faced new calls, both from internal and external markets. Concerning the Asia, I may also say that it is another threat that oil prices went down, because you know, our most important in our shift from Europe to Asia was our contract with China. The long-term contract, it is oil priced, and this project it involves construction of Power Siberia pipeline, the gas pipeline to China, and it can break even only at $100 per barrel. The oil price should be $100 per barrel, and still the oil price is much lower, so Gazprom is not now that much interested in exporting gas to China. So we have challenges both in the west and in the east of our country, so we have to do something with our export policy, and I will proceed to that shortly. Concerning the European gas balance, I should mention that fairly speaking, the calculations show that in all realistic scenarios, Russia still remains key supplier to the European market, because its gas costs, and including the thing with ruble devaluation, Russian gas costs lower comparing to the new gas suppliers, potential gas suppliers to Europe. So this is about the European gas production, internal gas production decline that is substituted with the LNG, new LNG from different countries. But in this situation, Russian pipeline gas is more or less the same added volumes. So the indigenous gas production in Europe is mainly substituted by new supplies, and in this way European gas balance gets diversified in the middle and in the long term. Here you can see that gas demand in Europe is more or less stable. We think that in the middle term it can be stable, but if we analyze what is going on with the energy consumption of Europe, we will see that if European Union meets its goals, and we are suppose that it will more or less fairly do that, then the gas consumption in Europe will go down, as well as the energy consumption decreases. So the gas demand should be probably more lower, and this is a kind of an optimistic case. In long term, gas demand we regard as much lower than today's one. Then I should probably proceed to the Russian responses, and we've kind of adapted to what is going on at the European gas market, and the existing long-term contracts to Europe, they leave little room for us to export more, but they kind of guarantee a minimum of our gas exports to Europe, and because of European market is over-contracted, there will probably no room for new gas supplies up to 2020-2025. And what should I mention here? That the main thing we've done in the last 5-7 years was that the long-term contracts pricing formulas were renegotiated, and in order to maintain market share, Gazprom made a lot of discounts. It eased take-or-pay clauses, and the certain introduction of spot component was made into the contract formulas. So during the period of 2009-2015, for 6 years, over more than 60 gas contracts were renegotiated and reviewed with more than 30 clients. So the calculations based on Russian customs analysis and Nexent World Gas model, we use this model. It is integrated in our complex. It involves in its calculations the contractual prices, and if we analyze them, we will see that comparing to the pre-crisis formulas of Gazprom contracts, Gazprom has already provided 25% discount to these pre-crisis formulas. And as a result, the gap between oil indexed and spot price narrowed. And today, on February 2016, according to the International Monetary Fund, the gas price of Russian gas price on German border was $6.8 per billion thermal unit. This is mentioned a little bit further. So $4.8 per million British thermal unit is equal to $170 per thousand cubic meters, and it is quite a low price, and it is quite a competitive price compared to, for example, $12 per million British thermal unit 2 years ago. 2 and 4 years ago, the prices were triple or at least twice higher than today. Russia seems therefore to remain the major European gas supplier for the next 10-15 years. We have we do not shift towards east in the coming 5 to 7 years, and Asian market for us will lead to the growth of our export revenues, but the European gas market will kind of stabilize in its export volumes. So Russian gas in Asia will set a floor price for LNG, as well as Central Asian gas. It is also pipeline gas. Concerning oil, the oil exports to Asia is more attractive than the European route for us, and it is replacing European supplies. The same with oil products. Russian oil products are decreasing in the European and will be decreasing in the European market. So what we have so far, it is a mutual dependency between the EU and Russia. We do not see that much credible alternatives, and Russia is still well placed to defend its market share because, as I mentioned, the prices are now very competitive. We have kind of competitive advantage to the new LNG supplies, especially to the East African, the truly new, and US LNG and Canadian LNG. So this is like if we build a supply curve of gas to Europe, we will see that in the first place there is Algerian and Libyan and Qatarian gas. Then we have a huge supply of Russian gas, and on the much higher price we will see US LNG, Canadian LNG, Norway. Yes, there we'll see Norway LNG and Eastern African LNG. So actually Europe is able to substitute for Russian gas, but it will cost more. Then I will shortly proceed to the international climate policy and say a few words about how Russia feels in that in this situation. I should probably start that at national levels, a lot of countries have already introduced emission trading systems or carbon taxes, so it is not a new thing, but it still remains a question whether the worldwide trading systems, emission trading system, could be developed. Concerning Russia on the whole, according to the Russian World Fund, the Paris Agreement is neutral, Russia is not yet a donor, but it won't be a recipient of financial help to tackle some climate issues. Russia will aim to reduce its greenhouse by 25-30% by 2030. This is written in our legislation, but most experts perceive this as a not ambitious enough goal, because in 1990 Russian emissions were very high. Soviet Union has a very powerful industry, and since then we do not have it, and therefore greenhouse gases should be lower. So Paris Agreement can stimulate Russia to work on its own low carbon development strategy, and we are doing that. Some institutes are already doing that in Russia. More active climate measures on the international level, as we perceive it, are likely to be taken after 2020-2025, and we do not see any game-changing measures that can be introduced in our models that will in some very significant manner change the world energy balances in the short coming period. So we see that most active measures according to in the climate policy and according to Paris Agreement will be made, for example, in 10 years. And the last thing is that implementation of current national plans won't lead us to the 2 degrees trajectory, and it won't lead to the world emissions volumes decrease. So national plans that are current, they are not enough to decrease our emissions, and we have to make them more tough, more strict. This is from our new research that is not yet published, and our analysts have summed up all the national plans, and it shows that up to 2030 we are not stabilizing the world CO2 emissions. So we are hoping that new national plans will be more strict and more tough. And to conclude, I should probably say again that a new competitive environment creates for Russian energy sector less favorable conditions, but still we do not foresee a radical shift from Russian gas, because alternatives are more expensive, significantly decreases the European share in our oil exports as well as oil products exports. But the cooperation between Russia and Europe is on the economically viable interaction, and it should proceed in this way. And concerning climate initiatives, we think that they should develop further to make our world CO2 emissions decrease. Thank you so much.
Hvala lepa za polno informacije.
Thank you very much for so much information, which is the result of expert analysis, and much really can be then built on this analysis. Now, Zoran, may I invite you to the floor so that you invite your present your contribution. Good morning, everybody. Also on my behalf, thank you for inviting me, and sincere congratulations to the organizers and also to the city of Ljubljana for the Green Capital title. The Paris Agreement, presentation of further activities and practice. Paris is not the end of the way, it is the start of a long and difficult way to the no-carbon society, to sustainable development. So this is a very important path which arises from the Paris Agreement. This is a good plan for the planet. The mission of the Paris Agreement is much broader than it can be conceived from the name. It is a new paradigm for the sustainable development. The plan itself is one of the most important documents that the United Nations adopted in the last couple of decades. It will undoubtedly pave the way for the next decades to come, if not until the end of this century. Let us say that the Paris Agreement is a story about hope. This is an exceptional challenge, but we are also dealing with a historic opportunity and generational responsibility. As Pope Francis wrote just before the Paris conference,
all is not lost. Human beings, while capable of the worst, are also capable of rising above themselves, choosing again what is good and making a new start.
Or as President Obama stressed in his introductory speech to the Paris conference,
we are one of the first generations to feel the impact of climate change, and probably the last to do something about it.
The Paris Agreement opens up thousands of good ideas and opportunities, but it will also require a proactive work on the part of everybody: politicians, scientists, experts, businesses, NGOs, the broader public, of all of us. Each sector will have to do its mission. Also, the energy, probably the biggest share than some other sectors. And this is, I guess, also what this conference is here for. With energy, all sectors actually require a timely, solid and reliable political signal in order to invest sustainably. For a sustainable investment cycle, you need a timely signal so that you do not start your investments too early, too late, or with a different pace. So also the environmental skeptics will need to be invited to come with us on this path, and we will have to convert those who actually deny that climate change is happening, those who will still continue to grasp and to stick with the outdated survival patterns. I guess there are too many of such inhabitants on our planet, also in Slovenia. Many of you will recall Sarah Palin, the vice presidential candidate during the elections in the United States in 2008. When she was asked whether polar bear is endangered, whether climate changes are threatening the polar bear, she said,
"Come on, polar bears are not endangered, they are just unlucky."
For such skeptics, this agreement is a breakthrough. So we need to convert them. So what is the basis of the Paris Agreement? It is a legally binding and universal instrument. It contains a long-term climate term of limiting the temperature growth below 2% and further 1.5%. It contains 5-year ambitious cycles to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. It contains provisions on transparency and monitoring the meeting of commitments, and it contains financial and other types of assistance to be granted to developing countries. It is an ambitious agreement, so it wants to limit the global temperature rise beneath 2 centigrades and also endeavor to limit for further 1.2 degrees. Net zero emissions of greenhouse gases are to be achieved already in the second half of this century. It contains the legally binding commitments of contracting parties, so the NDCs, and these NDCs are to guarantee that these ambitions are upgraded within 5-year cycles. And it also gives a provides for a global overview of targets, and this global overview should happen every 5 years, starting in 2018, where we should increase our ambitions for the next 5-year cycle. So it is also a transparent agreement. All contracting parties need to grant their own contribution to attaining the global target, and they all need to monitor their progress through the so-called MRV, monitoring, reporting and verification. And these rules now are being prepared in the convention bodies, and they are to be finalized by 2020. This is a fair agreement. The assistance provisions for the vulnerable and least developed countries are there. The promised goal to mobilize $100 billion American dollars a year until 2020, and then a reflection by 2025, where these funds are to be upgraded so that this financial assistance is also provided post-2025. And this agreement also contains a promise that the administrative capacity will be enhanced in the developing country, and that the appropriate technologies will be transferred to those countries. What is the timeline? The Council of the Environmental Ministers and Foreign Ministers has already gone through the first reflection period. In April, the Paris Agreement is to be solemnly signed in New York on the 22nd of April, and possibly heads of governments and presidents are to be there to sign this agreement. On Slovenia's behalf, the agreement shall be signed by the Prime Minister Miro Cerar. It will expedite the activities to ratify. We expect that in 2016 the activities to ratify the agreement are to be expedited, and it is expected that in line with national procedures the agreement is to be ratified by 2018. Further timelines are still being agreed upon between member states, and the Commission will shortly propose the finalized timeline. In 2018, dialogue is to be conducted on the global level, where all efforts are to be assessed, and intergovernmental panel for climate change shall by that time also prepare the analysis as to what is to be understood and what would the target of 1.5 degrees centigrade bring. In 2020, then the new global review of commitments awaits us. What is Slovenia's position to the Paris Agreement? Slovenia shares the position of the European Union and member states that the adoption of this agreement is a historic success. Slovenia believes that this is an ambitious plan, that it is a necessary and urgent plan if we want to achieve a low-carbon society and sustainable development. It is a universal document, a long-term document, legally binding document. It is a well-balanced and fair document. It includes all contracting parties and all sectors, and this is important because previous documents, the Kyoto Protocol, only brought together a low number of countries, especially in the period from 2010 to 2020. Slovenia also shares the position of the European Union and member states that immediately after the agreement is signed, the timeline needs to be prepared for its ratification. So far, only the United States have prepared such a timeline because President Obama wants to have ratification done prior to the presidential elections end of this year. Other countries, neither the European Union and other member states, have not yet communicated their timelines. Now, what is Slovenia's position to the climate energy framework of the European Union up until 2030? The European Union and member states need to continue with the preparation of the legislation for this package. We know that just one document has been prepared so far. This summer we expect a new document, a regulation or rules that will share the burden among member states for those sectors that are not included in trading. The Council and European Parliament will need to intensify the debate so that also the entire implementing legislation is adopted, not only the package 2030, but this legislative framework is much broader. It doesn't only concern climate and energy, it also concerns transport, as was already explained by the Commissioner, and many other sectors. So there will be a high number of these rules and regulations, and of course all of them need to be adopted as soon as possible. So this would conclude my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Zoran, for this very comprehensive presentation. Just one question. Tomorrow it's Saturday, and the colleague said, so do we have enough time, or should we rather go fishing? Do we have fishing? Do we have time for fishing tomorrow? Just tomorrow. Danijel, the floor is yours.
Welcome on behalf of the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Directorate General for Energy. Thank you, France, for inviting me to this prestigious event, and congratulations for this high turnout. It's really impressive to see such a high number of participants. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I just know what I want to say. But that does not mean to say that what we have at the ministry lags behind other developments in other institutions and sectors. Apart from our foreign guests, we are more or less all familiar with the fact that an umbrella document is being prepared here in Slovenia, the energy concept, and that is not the only strategic document that is currently under preparation at the national level. I can say that that we are now in a very strong momentum of preparing strategic documents. But this covered document, this umbrella document, is the strategy of strategies. So in this sense, we are well harmonized, I can say. The preparation of these documents runs in parallel. There is a lot of dialogue, a lot of harmonization, exchange of opinion between the ministry and other institutions. In the beginning, I would like to say a few words about the energy concept of Slovenia, so for the benefit of our foreign guests as well. And then I would like to outline the system and the situation in the field of energy in Slovenia, and I would like to say a few words about our long-term visions that we want to enshrine in our documents. The energy concept started to be designed very early when we prepared our positions and our main goals that we want to include in the energy concept. And with these starting points, we started a public debate last year in June. We gathered as many initiatives and comments as possible. Those were the comments on those first orientations and directions that we gave to the public. And then we analyzed the feedback. And this year, in late January, early February, we organized a special event for the general public. Our vision was to enhance the transition to a low-carbon society, because the energy concept is not only relating to the energy, but also to the climate and climate challenges. Already when debating this baseline for the concept, we saw that we need an in-depth discussion with the public in the continuation of the process. That is why we intend to prepare several public consultations that will cover topics of special significance. So we will speak about sources that we want to use in the future. We want to speak about the heat production sector. We want to speak about smart grids and the share of variable renewable sources that can be afforded by the energy system as we know it today. Now, to go back to the red thread of the Commissioner, Mrs. Bulc, the link between transport and energy is crucial. Transport in Slovenia is a very exposed field, perhaps even more than in the rest of the EU. 35% of all energy use in the EU falls under the transport sector, but in Slovenia this percentage is even higher, because Slovenia is a transit country due to its geographical position. So we can speak about 43% of energy consumption in the transport sector. So this is really crucial. It's crucial that these two sectors begin to work hand in hand. If we take a look at the energy balance for Slovenia, we see that 50% of energy needs to be imported. And we are very much dependent on import, especially when it comes to oil, petrol, and so on. Slovenia does not have its own sources for those energy sources, and they simply have to be imported. For gas, we have a very robust infrastructure, and also for the next 20 to 40 years, gas will remain one of the main transition energy sources, helping us to ensure the transition to a low-carbon society by 2050. Then we hope to embrace the ambitious goal from the energy sector, and that we will manage to decrease emissions by at least 80%. That is one of our main long-term goals. In Slovenia, when it comes to energy production, we have a mixture that can be divided into thirds. This gives us a certain stability and ensures a certain quality of the product. So we want to maintain this distribution, this quality that is provided by the energy system. So this energy mixture means that we provide electricity from nuclear, thermal sources and from renewable sources. Here I have in mind, in particular, hydro energy sources. There is still some potential in Slovenia when it comes to rivers, river bodies, so that in the future we will continue with this policy that encourages the energy production from hydro plants. So renewable energy with an emphasis on hydro sources. When we speak about regionalization, where we stand in Slovenia when it comes to regionalization, well, this is already in our genes. Our energy systems have been built through decisions on regionalization. The gas system, the electricity system have been built in another time, and they were adapted to a larger system. We are well aware historically that such a regional cooperation is indispensable. We are very well connected, and we continue to be connected with our neighboring countries. The only country where there is room for improvement, both for the gas and electricity interconnectors, is Hungary. But these projects are underway. Now we are conceiving the energy concept, and we find that one thing is particularly important, and it is also recognized in with the teams that work on the development concept of Slovenia. These are the 5 pillars ensuring sustainable development for Slovenian society. A very strong emphasis is put to the quality of life. The quality of life is ensured by the infrastructure, by the energy, and here we have in mind the regulated part, but also the market part, the non-regulated part. We have to be aware of this connection. Perhaps this connection is not that much apparent. That is the connection between the production part, then distribution part, and everything else that leads to the final consumer. I think a lot will have to be done in order to make this connection, this chain, more visible, so that even final consumers will be aware of it. The nation needs to be aware where are the sources of this quality of life, because this will enable us wise decisions in the future, wise decisions that will enable us to maintain this high quality of life, this high standard of living, so that we will continue to live as we do now, but not only we, but also our children and their children. We want to build on the existing foundations and experiences, because we believe that the energy systems that we have today are good, they are functioning, but they need to be upgraded in line with the standards and trends that can be identified at the EU level and so on. I'm speaking about digitalization, about e-mobility, everything that has been already mentioned more or less. today. These trends will serve as a basis for the rehauling of our systems. Our systems need to be updated. E-mobility is a typical example, for instance, because on the one hand, it is a huge challenge for the energy system, for the electricity system. If we try to calculate what is the electricity current when we try to charge our electric car, and we see that we can charge a car for 100 kilometers in 3 minutes, for us this is inconceivable. We probably cannot supply energy for 1,000 cars at the same time, at the same moment here in Slovenia. Currently, our system is not capable of sustaining that demand. But with a good infrastructure that could follow the demand, the fluctuations in demand, then we could improve the efficiency of our electricity system. For instance, if we charge our cars during the night, when the trapeze electric power plants are still, then we could improve the efficiency of use of electricity. And this can be our own product, because liquefied gas, liquefied fuels are something that we need to import, because we do not have our own sources, we do not have our own production plants. Electricity is a real strategic advantage, a real strategic product. We will always defend and make the link between energy and quality of life more visible. Energy is not a means on its own, without an end. It is always in the service of citizens and of their quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you for the floor, and thank you for inviting me to such a prestigious conference, and congratulations also on my behalf. You have heard many words of praise for the organization of this meeting, and I think it's urgently needed for us in the energy sector to speak together, to share ideas. There's much awareness in our community. This is evidenced in the recent developments, and also the presence by the Minister and Madam Commissioner inspires us with the hope that we are indeed on the stepping stone or on the entrance of the new developments, and this is something that we need if we want to attain all the goals that we have set for ourselves. Let me also thank for the words of praise that the Energy Agency has received. This, of course, means that we shoulder even more responsibility. We try to carry out our mission, and the agency's mission is, of course, not to walk hand in hand with a regulated company, but rather to guarantee that the goals of the country are being met. We are trying to pursue these goals, and we encourage the development of cost-efficient grids, which will networks which will make it possible to attain the goals that were defined both by the European Union and Slovenia. All of this, of course, means that with so doing we will serve the customers better. I guess we are the first institution in the hierarchy on the energy market which is focused on benefits for consumers, while state is dealing with broader issues. Let me start my introduction with the points of departure before I mention the role of the regulator in meeting these goals. Of course, you're all familiar with the starting points, which include fight against climate change, reduction of CO2 emissions. Of course, we also know that it is right that production and consumption are monitored because they contribute to emissions the most. We also pursue the goal of reducing our dependency on imports, and our third goal is to enhance competitiveness, to boost the economic development, to encourage the development of new technologies which will bring about new jobs, but the key goal is to ensure safe and affordable energy for our consumers and businesses. Based on all these commitments that can be read in the Green Paper and all other strategic documents produced at the level of the European Union, the ACER being the formal institution bringing together national regulators, and CEER being the informal organization of regulators, has published a so-called document Bridge 2025. This is the document that serves the purpose of meeting the commitments and targets that the European Union has set for itself for the period up until 2020 or even 2030. The key areas in this document are, of course, listed, and I can say that the European market is more and more harmonized. There are many developments in this field. Activities are very intensive. Much is actually happening on the regional markets, and then this is then fed into the national developments. And also the grid codexes are very actively being prepared. Next to security of supply, the focus topic is the transition to the low-carbon society, including higher share of renewables in the generation, and the grid user is now put at the forefront. The grid user is the one who will need to actively contribute to the energy efficiency and to the meeting of all these goals. And this then leads to the establishment of safe, or actually smart grids, the smart market, and consequently smart regulation. By way of illustration, what does this document, Bridge 2025, cover? Of course, regulators need to cover these topics as well when they perform their mission. You can see that from that slide, and I won't read it out, but what is the role of the regulator in this field? Of course, regulation is a dynamic process. It has to respond to the goals and targets defined by the nation. It has to respond to the development that is necessary if we want to achieve these targets. And if the state or the government is designing policies and adopting political decisions with broader social perspectives, then we as regulators have to deal with market development, with the cost-efficient investments into the grids, and as I have mentioned here, the focal point is the end consumer. The end consumer is the one who really needs the electricity, the energy, who need the network for the transmission and distribution of electricity and gas, and consumers' decision impact further operators' decision on future investments into the networks. This means that we as an agency have a certain role to play in the transition to the low-carbon economy. Our primary role is to introduce smart regulation, and this has to be in line with the needs concerning the development of smart grids. We need to be attentive to the new technologies, and we have to introduce incentives for the operators. I have to emphasize that in the document just mentioned, it is clearly defined that operators, especially the distribution system operators, are not only implementing their traditional role of managing networks and maintaining networks. Now they also have the role of being a neutral promoter or neutral incenter on the market. This means that they are also active in the design of new services that will ensure that end customers more actively contribute to the meeting of the targets. Of course, this also then concerns the definition of tariffs. Regulators are best known on each market because of how they set the tariffs for the electricity and gas networks. And regulators have already adopted certain measures in this respect. The new regulatory period kicked off in January this year. Now we are at the beginning of this new 3-year period, and in this current regulatory period our agency has already introduced pilot tariffs. The purpose of that is to test the projects and services that operators of the distribution and transport system could offer to the market. With certain incentives, we can then also stimulate these new services, and then we of course analyze what is their result, how do they impact consumer behavior. We have also introduced a specific tariff for electric mobility. Here we shall study what is going on and what has happened in the field of electric mobility and what will be the need for any future specific tariffs. We have also introduced a specific tariff to support the development of self-sufficiency. The government has published a decree on self-sufficiency in January of this year, and agency has adopted a supportive role with the aim that government goals are obtained. To this aim we have redesigned our methodology. I have mentioned previously that we are now in the demonstration phase of introducing smart grids. In the next 3 years, we shall primarily focus on analyzing and establishing the required services. We shall here take into account the new role of the distribution operators, and our goal is that in the next regulatory period, starting in 2019, we shall already introduce appropriate incentives for the introduction of smart grids. Of course, we will have to consider the transition to dynamic tariff setting. At any case, regulatory changes will aim for the output-based regulation. We know that this is quality regulation, and achievement or failure to achieve the set standards is stimulated in this methodology with a certain award, or it is penalized if standards are not achieved. It is well known that Slovenia is also just about to redesign the market. You see these graphs on the slide, and they show what the investment trends in the energy sector are. Why is this important? Well, because we need to be aware that investments are needed into the redesign of certain systems or overhaul of certain electricity facilities, and at the same time a lot of energy and funds will need to be invested into the construction of new needed infrastructure that will serve to transit to the low carbon economy and society. In all of this, we need to be aware that there needs to be sufficient room for these investments. Investments will have to be made in renewables generation or electricity generation from renewable sources, but at the same time the strategy will have to be designed which will put renewables on pure market basis, because more and more often we see theoretical opinions that governmental decisions, not only the decisions of Slovenian government but also of others in the European Union, related to the incentives for electricity RES generation, lead to market distortions. At the same time, one needs to pay attention to the pricing oscillations. We see that here we have monitored how individual components of the final electricity price for the final household consumer have evolved. I need to stress here that the most recent report issued by Acer and CAR for 2015 emphasizes, and it includes of course also Slovenia, as one of the countries who in the period from 2012 to 2014 have raised those billing components the most which are not under the influence of consumers. We are not the country that has increased those prices the most, but we are indeed among the top countries. Why? We are saying that consumers also have to manage their consumption. If they want to change the supplier, then we need to be mindful of that part of the bill on which consumers still can have a certain impact. This report comments that such policies also lead to greater passive attitude, to an enhanced passive attitude of consumers on the market. By way of conclusion, let me say that roles on this market are very much intertwined. If we want to achieve all these targets, we necessarily need a very good energy concept, and this should not serve as criticism for the minister, because we are all aware that you are, as designers of electricity policy, in a very difficult situation. In our opinion, in the opinion of the agency, you are on the right track. You have established dialogue with all stakeholders. You also are considering many comments that have been presented by the stakeholders, and you also see that a high number of stakeholders is interested in redefining and shaping the future energy policy. We hope that you will maintain your stance so that the policy will respond to the broader needs of our community and not only to the needs of specific groups and groupings. We wish that September of 2017 will be the final deadline for the adoption of the energy concept. Why? Because this is the concept that will serve as a basis for many other documents. There are still the National Development Energy Plan and other action plans for individual areas, and these of course all are the foundations for the 10-year development plans for the operators and also the investment plans, and these plans then of course determine the costs, the investments, and also the setting of tariffs and connection fees. All of these activities are felt by consumers, but not all investments are of such nature that are beneficial to consumers. This is why attention is needed, as I have mentioned before. Therefore, we really need very clear goals, and we need to define a very clear path for how to achieve these goals, because of course it is in our interest to achieve the goals in the most efficient manner. Just let me summarize what I tried to impart as my main message. We need a concept. The planned projects have to be economically viable, environmentally acceptable, because we have no room any longer to carry out investments that prove too costly. We need to be aware of our responsibilities. We are responsible to ourselves, but also to the coming generations, because the decisions that we take will be felt by them primarily. Thank you very much. Professor Poredoš, I think you're up next.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me, and let me join to those who congratulated you on this organization and on the selection of the title, Considerations, Energy Considerations, because decisions should always be based on considerations, and I think it's a very important word that should be used, and we should remind ourselves of it also in our work. Today we did not speak about a certain topic so much, but I would like to put an emphasis on it because I think it is important if we want to achieve our goals. Renewables, low carbon society, energy supply based on renewables. Here consensus has been reached, there are no more dilemmas. However, there are different ways on how to reach these goals, and I'm afraid that we do not know yet how to reach these goals and when we would be able to reach them. There are certain forecasts, but they are quite unreliable. So in my opinion, we will continue to live with fossil fuels energy, I'm afraid, for quite a long time. It's a fact. Sometimes it seems to me that we are investing all our energy in the renewables, but in doing so we tend to forget about the current situation. And the fact is that the current energy sources, for instance for the electricity production, are still based on fossil fuels in more than 70% when we speak about global levels. So if we do not manage these fossil fuels with due diligence and care, then we may commit irreversible errors in the period between now and the achievement of the renewable targets. Let me just mention one problem: a non-efficient use of primary energy when it comes to electricity production. On the basis of the data of the International Energy Agency, electricity production is, as you can see on this slide, which means that about 2/3 of primary energy are wasted. Here I see ample opportunities, ample room for improvement. We should invest our efforts in order to stop the wastage and to recover those 2/3 of energy. And of course, by lowering the emissions, we will also not need new alternative sources to replace that lost energy. So when it comes to the conversion of primary fossil fuels, the main source of wasted energy is heat. So my point is that we should first capture what is currently lost, what is completely lost for us, but is in fact pure energy. Now, what are the opportunities to take advantage of this wasted energy when it comes to primary production of electricity from fossil fuels? I'm speaking about heat. Huge amounts of heat are generated in electricity production, and this heat can be used and distributed for different purposes. There are systems that enable us to take advantage of this heat that is being produced in cogeneration, and they are called district energy systems. Here I'm speaking about district heating and district cooling as well. Well, partly this is already taking place. In Slovenia, we do use 20 to 22% of that energy. Now, to go back to the previous image, only 9% are used at the global level. The rest is wasted. As we know, heat is excellent for the heating purposes, and nowadays we do have technologies at our disposal to use heat also for cooling. Conversion losses can be avoided in one way. On the one hand, they can be used for heating, because heat can be transmitted to commercial users, to individual users, and technology also allows us to convert heat into cooling situations, so cooling agents, because there are growing needs for the cooling of buildings. These are excellent opportunities for further development. However, when it comes to district systems, we need to bear in mind efficiency. Here I have in mind losses due to transport and distribution. That is why it is wise to think about a evenly distributed energy supply when we plan such new systems. So when we plan these systems for the future, we need to include in our plans these new opportunities. As you can see on this slide, we see that a certain area is covered from different sources. Here we have one source for the energy, electricity, and this same source of the electrical energy serves also as a source for heating and for cooling, and thus we have lower losses for transport and transmission. This is a modernized concept for energy supply, and of course there is always a place for gas and low carbon fossil fuel. I believe that such a low-carbon fossil fuel will be present up to the very last moment before we reach carbon society, and of course we hope that we will reach a state where we will be able to declare ourselves a carbon society as soon as possible. Now, in this second part of my intervention, I would like to speak about a different topic, a topic that has been mentioned several times this morning. I find this topic very important for the Slovenian energy industry sector. In our Academy of Science and Arts, we have a Energy Council. At this council, we discuss the topics and current affairs, and we try to make our contributions when it comes to finding solutions to current problems. About a year ago, I have presented here at a similar conference the results and the first drafts of our positions. These positions have been now summarized in 5 points. First of all, we say that we need an energy concept. An energy concept for Slovenia is indispensable. We need such an umbrella document. I think this is indisputable. We also emphasize that we need to have a real assessment of the future needs for energy, and that we need to take into account the optimum use of the already available sources. So our forecasts need to be as realistic as possible. And as it was already mentioned by the Commissioner, we are well aware that transport is important, and that energy use in transport is of crucial importance and deserves our attention. Here, we want to point out one thing. Based on the experience in the past, we don't want the privatization process to endanger the quality of supply. This has to be included in the energy concept because it has to be ensured. Research has to be conducted by experts, and the results from research should serve as the basis for quality decision-making on the political level. Well, perhaps I could still use a minute or two of my time, but I am offering this minute to you for considerations. I do believe that your council... Well, let us go on. Euroelectric is gathering all the knowledge and has a very impressive team at its disposal. I'm very pleased that its Director General is today with us. We have agreed for him to make an overview of the situation, of the current situation.
Thank you very much, Frans. I hope it was a nice introduction. I didn't understand a word from it. I'm happy to be here. I'm the first one, I think, in this panel to speak on behalf of the industry. It was very good to hear what the politicians are thinking, what the regulators are thinking, what the universities are thinking, and what we should do. But how would we react to that? And I'm sorry, I know your lunch has started half an hour ago, but I need 10-15 minutes of your time still to go. Let's look at that. You know this. We are going to the decarbonization 40%. You know the renewable targets and you know all the targets, so let's skip that. Do we decarbonize? The current environment of the electricity in Europe is 55% of the production is decarbonized. Where is it? It's mainly nuclear, 25%. It's 8% in the wind, it's 12% the big hydro, it's 3-4% solar, you call it. How many fossil fuels are in? 40%. Are we on the right track? Yes, we are. What are we doing? We're adding the green parts in this graph, 2012, 13, 14. All renewables. Why are we doing that? Because we believe it. No, we get the best subsidies for renewables. That's why we add it. Are we closing down fossil fuels? You see that below, the pink part. Yes, we're doing that also. We're adding some gas, but we're stopping with that. And we're closing down fossil fuels at a significant speed. Do we do that because it makes sense? No, because it doesn't make money. It's that simple. What's the balance of the storyline? That we increase significantly the renewables and that we decrease the fossil fuels in our portfolio and that we decarbonize very carefully. Where did this bring us? It brought us by a decreasing power price. It has been said at the beginning already, the power price is going down, down, and down, and will go down. The incremental variable cost of wind, solar, hydro, and nuclear are probably in the order of magnitude between 0 and maybe 15 euros. So we will get a power price which is ensuring that we can invest nothing anymore at the end of the day. That's the track where we are on, and I think there is not much to say about this. What is lucrative to do nowadays? That is to keep your coal plants open. If you look at the spread which you see on the graph there, the top line is what you make with a coal plant. And if you say that's almost nothing, then you have seen it correctly. If you open up your gas plant, then you make quite some losses. That's not so wise. You better close that one. I did not add the renewables at market value, because if I would put the line, it would be probably at the bottom of the view graph without subsidies. It would be 60, 70 euros you have to add in that one. What does this mean? This means that we are decarbonizing, that we can still run on a commercial basis sometimes coal plants, we cannot run the gas plants anymore, and the renewables have to be subsidized fully. This is the market in which we are, and the price is going down and down on the wholesale market. Is the consumer enjoying this? No, consumers are faced with rising bills. The bills are going up, and not a little bit. The rest support is charged on the bill. Consumer doesn't have anything to say about it, he just has to pay it. The rising variable costs are taking care that the system gets less stable. We need stability, and we need backup generation in the case that some nights the sun is not really shining and the wind is not always blowing, that we have backup on that. That's not always available. Is the security of the system in danger? It's not getting better, let's put it like that. So what are we doing now with the consumer? Here you see what happens. The bottom part, the slight blue, is the electricity price from 2008 till 2012. It decreased by 7%. Electricity became cheaper for the consumer. The grid charges remained more or less stable. At least they increased over that period with 80% the inflation. The policy cost increased with 46%. What are we paying in this graph? We're paying policy costs. We're not paying electricity anymore. We're not paying for the grids. We're paying for the policies which we have designed. And the policies are getting more and more expensive. It has been said before, they're unaffordable. They're sustainable from the environmental side. They're not sustainable from the economic side. The bill is split roughly in three parts in Europe. 1/3 supply, 1/3 less, a little bit less for transport, and 1/3 for policy, growing with 46% in the last 8 years. Is this the way we are going in the future? Are we going to pay the policy cost instead of the electricity cost? Probably, ladies and gentlemen, if we keep the bill like it is, the answer is yes. The electricity will become lower and lower in the price, and the cost of policy will return. What you're paying. Is this a competitive market? No, this is not a competitive market. This is a market where you pay taxes. This is a market where you pay policy costs. Is this helping for energy efficiency? That's nonsense. Reflect a little bit about the energy which is under this system. It's wind, it's solar, it's hydro, it's nuclear. What do you say if you don't take these products? You turn the wind blades out. Any fossil fuel safe? No. Hydro. The river goes beside the turbines. Anything safe? No. Nuclear. You put the rods and you protect them because they don't radiate into those ships. Anything safe? Hardly. Solar. You disconnect the solar grid, the solar farm. In Germany we have a production and capacity which is at this moment above 100% of what they need on peak days in the renewable. On a Sunday afternoon you make more than you need if the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. What do you do with it? Are you going for energy saving in these scenarios? Reflect on the value of energy savings in a decarbonized world. It's a very sensible subject in a fossil fuel world. You save gas, oil and coal. That I understand. Energy savings in a renewable world, I don't understand. What should we do now with this retail bill? Should we keep it rising in order to push them out of the system? Because my solar panel is costing me 15 euro cents per kilowatt hour, and I'm paying in some countries at this moment 30 cents, while the market is for electricity is at 3 cents. For the consumer, it's wise to go from 30 to 50. For the market, it's stupid if the material is there for 3 cents and you pay 15 cents for your own investment. Should we not try to get a more competitive energy market and try to see that the consumer pays for his electricity what roughly the wholesale market is with a normal market, and not the political cost on it? Should we not try to have the grid tariffs a little more dynamic? To say, listen, if the grid is empty and there's nobody on it, like driving on a road in the night and there's nobody, it's not very costly. But if it's limited and we cannot supply you all because you all want to charge your car at the same time, you should pay significantly more. That requires dynamic pricing. When the commissioner was saying this morning we need dynamic measurements, dynamic, smart meters, I would say yes. But we need also smart pricing. There is no sense in smart meters and pricing the electricity according to this basis. That's nonsense. Because the consumer has no choice, the only thing he can do is use less, and that means that he gives the taxes to somebody else and that he gives the goods cost to somebody else, but not in his sale. And on the efficiency it's also not so. So smart pricing would require 3 elements in my opinion. One would be the kilowatt hour. That will be significantly cheaper. And significantly I mean in the direction of the wholesale market. Could be in some countries less than 10% of the current cost of electricity. I would say you pay for your grids according when you need them. When they're construed and when they're limited, you pay much more and you pay less at the moment the grids are open. So you get a dynamic pricing, and if you want to charge your car all at the same peak time, you pay much more than you pay in the night. For the third element is the flexibility that you have on the grid, on the supply. There would be a minor fee to that in order to manage the flexibility. Those are the 3 elements. Those 3 elements will have to rise the energy cost in the order of magnitude of 10 euro cents, in my opinion, per kilowatt hour, or what is it, 100 euros, a little bit less, per megawatt hour. That would make an investable market. That is below everything the consumer is paying nowadays in Europe. Lower. Because the surcharges are rising these bills. And I brought some brochures where you can see by country what the surcharges are. There are countries where we have surcharges in Europe of magnitude. Denmark is the record. 66% of the bill is charges by the authorities. And then we start talking about energy savings after we present that bill. Looking at the next one, renewables in the market. I think there has been enough said. There is nothing new in this graph. You have heard it 3 times this morning. What would we like to see? Full competition in the market. And the competition is not between the suppliers, the competition is between the alternatives which the consumers are getting in the future. The competition will be the consumer who says, listen, I can build a solar panel on my roof for 15 euro cents, I'm paying 28 euro cents, I do it. The competition will be with the one who says, listen, yeah, grid, if you charge me too much, I will put my battery in. These things are coming. And that means if we don't adapt the system, and don't adapt to a full competition in this area, that we will see that people are walking away from the system, which could get more economic solutions, but which is burdened with a lot of charges from the authorities and would not give the solutions in that way. And we have to open, discuss this, see this on the table, and react on it. I'm not saying that the authorities don't have the rights to charge the consumers, but not as an energy charge. Then you call it taxes. It goes like taxes. Looking at the conventional generation, they have to compete with it. And they have to cope with the carbon cycle. And they have to cope with an ETS system. And it's tough luck if coal plants are getting more expensive because we have to decarbonize. But in a fair way. Renewables have to participate in the market. They should not be there on that fuel graph with a loss in the market price of 60 euros, which is fully compensated. I call that a capacity fee for renewables, which we have introduced in 2007, and which is running now already in a differentiated market, which is disturbing fully the European competition. should be completely phased out. Over. Storage. Grid operators, you better declare to have a battle with the storage at the end of the day. As a consumer, I got an option to put a couple of batteries in my cellar, or this hybrid car which I got will also help me through the night for 24 hours supply. It can do it. And it will come. Demand response, load shifting. Important. If you want to go to a world which is decarbonized, you have to shift loads to those moments that the wind is blowing and the sun is shining, and you have to take the benefits of that, and you have to curtail yourself at the moment that it's more expensive. If you don't want to do it, you have to pay. And these systems should be introduced economically and technically in order to have a decarbonized world with the benefits of the consumers and the lowest possible cost. Decentralized generation. No limitations on that. Buy your solar panels, go to the IKEA, buy your batteries, and compete with the industry. I think this is a fair environment where we should go. Decarbonization, is that a matter of coal plants? Ladies and gentlemen, let's break that meat. We got somebody more on this area. It's the industry. It's the airplanes. It's in the area of, I can hardly read it, in the households. And it's in the agriculture. And how are we going in this area? We're focusing on the electricity industry and we are miles away from the rest. We're not focusing on agriculture. We're not telling the people, listen, your fossil fuels in the cars, would we reduce 40% of the cars today? 40% in the electricity industry as a target is fine, but 40% in the cars, sorry, I have to look at my voters next year, not 40% of the cars. Would we reduce 40% in the heating sector? No, let's not discuss that. That's touching people. But we are touching our industries and we're touching the utilities, which is fine with me. I think we should do it. But we should not forget that there are more sectors and that the contributions are decreasing of the utilities at this moment, and they're at the top level. They're performing very well in the decarbonization area. We should look at the other sectors also. Let me give you some examples. Heating and cooling. 3/4 fossil fuel based. What are we going to do with it? What are we going to do with the gas, the coal? I can tell you we imported more gas last year from Russia, not less. We're increasing the volume. And at the same time we're saying let's shut down the fossil fuel plants. Should we not have a balanced approach? This is lagging 15-20% behind what is achieved in the industry. What is the policy on this one? When are we going with measurements to ensure that this goes in line? Let me go to the electrical cars with you. No. That's here. It's small, we probably cannot read it. The red line is what the target is of the EU Commission of tailpipe emissions in grams of CO2 per kilometer. The bars are giving you what we're doing in the different countries if we would electrify the transport. I can tell you we can go to 60 grams per CO2 tomorrow if we would electrify the transport and we would halve the emissions. 92% the Commissioner said it this morning of the fossil fuels which we're using in oil is in transport. What are we doing in that? Do we have 1.6% decarbonized cars at this moment? 1.6%? We're talking about 27% renewables, which translates in 2020 35% renewables in the electricity sector. Should we not balance these sectors a little bit? Because electrifying the transport is lagging miles behind. And I'm happy what the Commissioner said this morning. And I think we should look at these things. So I would plead that we go in this direction. Eurelectric's priorities. Low carbon investment. Yes, we promote that. We want it, but at a reasonable cost. Market design. Let's stop with fooling the customers. Let's put the real electricity cost. Let's put the dynamic grid price on the bill. And let's put the price for the capacity which you want, the amperage on the bill. And let's have the consumers decide how they would react on that. Don't give me artificial systems. Don't give me interference in the market. The problem with consumers is that they're clever and they make the right choices at the end of the day. They're not fooled. Let's give them full competition. Strengthening the EU ETS. Yes, we are in favor of having a clear cap and a clear system for the industry. And that should be strong. We should go down in the carbon. Decarbonizing the non-ETS sectors, heating, cooling, agriculture, has to be addressed. It should not be the next 10 years left where it is. Ensuring consistency in your measurements, in the market design, in the decarbonization, and be fair to your customers. Improving energy efficiency. Look really what you're using as fossil fuels and focus on that. But don't fool me by saying first you pay for a windmill, I'll put it as a surcharge on your bill, and the next day I tell you you have to save energy and I will turn the windmill out of operation. That is unexplainable for me. And that's what we're doing at this moment. Effective governance. Cooperations in the regions, we're in favor of that. It's not going that smoothly. I think there has a lot of work to be done to get regional, as in the forum last week, I saw how the member states are acting. We need the regional approach. If you would cross your national borders, which country, you would have a blackout rather soon. And we have to recognize that, we have to go to regional systems, we have to adapt that this is not a national matter anymore. And I don't believe that it should become a European level, but at least a regional level. 2 few guys more, if you can stand with me. Energy Union. Good start, but a long way away. Energy Union is talking, there's no concrete steps. Let's exchange the data, let's look together, let's see what can be done. We would like to have some more meat on the bones. We would like to see that in a RES system, renewable system, which goes over the market, which goes in designed for generation adequacy, which is not national anymore, but which is regional. We would like to see much more European approach in that area. We're doing our conference in Vilnius. This is the advertisement, which was not allowed today, was it, France? I will skip it away. These are the brochures which I put there. Energy prices, you can see what you're doing in your country. The ways to decarbonize is there. Our annual report is there. The DSO reports are there. There you will find all the details I just gave you separately today. Thank you for your attention and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of this panel. However, I still have 3 questions left for our panelists. First of all, I would like to ask Mr. Einari the following. You see, World Energy Council produces scenarios for energy industry globally, and you can see that on its web page. This includes analysis for Slovenia too. So I would like to ask you, Einari, given the fact that you have an overview of other countries, what are those indicators that are the most efficient, that can be monitored with a minimum effort?
What we have to do is that, well, we have to come up with the strategy how the governments should move away from their governance of the energy sector towards the way that the customers will be in the charge of the energy systems. And then we will just see the competition between all the energy suppliers in the market. So the key question there is that how this new structure of governance should look like, first of all, and then the governments should facilitate the transition towards this new energy market arrangements that would support the way of, say, fair and open competition in the market. All the other aspects just come along with that. It is very likely that you will also see then more regionalization. You will see that the customers will pick the right choices from the market, and the systems themselves will compete in a very good way in the end of the day. The question is, say, how to measure such kind of say, different approach to the energy sector. I don't have a very good answer on that, but well, the Energy Council is also working at such kind of indicators, how we can measure in the future also the, I would say, a liberalization level of energy markets in the country.
Jean-Michel, a question for you. You included an element of cool and cold in our deliberations. So my question would be the following. The energy policy of the European Union, the commitments, COP21, in view of all that, what are the opportunities for Europe as a whole, with 500 million people, to maintain its role in the world, its leading role?
I'm a university professor, and the biggest decision I take every day is what will be the color of my gilet today. But I have a question, so I will say what I think. We got both a few minutes ago. Renewable. Let's assume that it does exist for a while. Look at what say everybody at the world level. Renewable, we have them for decades. Okay? But did we find a way in the EU to make renewable living their own life on a market basis, earning their money, finding the place where they will deliver, etc., etc., etc. This is still to be made strong, because most of the time we still live from public orders, while the next step is already open. In most of the world, they have to live their life. We did kill half of our utilities, what Hans didn't say, but we did kill all of them. E.ON did lose 10 billion in the 2 last years. Okay, but whom will replace them? We don't care if they die. Kodak is dead, we don't care. Huh? Whom will replace them? Do we have these strong, pushy, renewable companies? That's one of the questions, half of my vision. The second half is from Hans. I did like pretty much what he said. Decarbonization of cars and trucks. Shit, we know that it's for tomorrow. We know that electrification of cars or driverless cars or trucks, we know that it's for tomorrow. Okay, but is it for European companies? Is it for European industry? What do we do in Europe, except Volkswagen cheating with emissions? What do we do? We know it's for tomorrow. So, innovation, we are far from being dead in the energy sector. Financing, look at the interest rate of the European Bank. Stay seated. How does it cost to take money from the European Bank? You are paid. You are paid to take money from the European Bank. So money is there. Innovation we have. So we should find a way. There is a way.
Jean-Michel, I promise that I will buy a crystal ball within the next few days, and I will send this crystal ball to you, so that in the future you will be able to give us an overview of the pictures that you will see in the crystal ball.
Taking into account all these energy desires to get new sources with new infrastructure and desires concerning the establishment of the uniform internal market and copper plate, then my question is very brief. Are we too ambitious in this respect?
New infrastructures, I would make a distinction between maybe the natural gas and the electricity sector. In the natural gas sector, if we talk about this region, maybe not particularly Slovenia, but some other countries who traditionally has been locked into a single supplier situation with monopolistic pricing, the product market. I think the rest of recent infrastructure investment was done in order to create alternatives and to create competition and to integrate these markets into the larger market. So the cost of infrastructure investment, I think, was justified, not because these infrastructures are fully utilized today, but the cost has been recovered through the decrease in the product price. So just one example, Lithuanian example, I mean, the government was accused that putting the LNG receiving terminal to Lithuania is extremely expensive. This is true. But as they opened the terminal, next day Lithuania got a 23% price difference from its supplier to the alternative. So the investment, the time through which the investment was recovered, not the infrastructure itself, but for the consumers, the investment was very, very fast. And it was the same for others. So I think you should be very careful, because if you have a small gas market, if you have not a very ambitious increase in natural gas, you have to care about very much on cost efficiency for the infrastructure. But if you use this investment to build up some leverage, to build up diversification, I think you can make an argument that this can pay back to the society in decreased product prices. So that's my story for natural gas. For electricity, I think it's a little bit tricky, because in Europe overall we still today have a massive overcapacity of electricity generation. This is left over of the pre-crisis times, and not too many companies can drop, even generation companies in Spain, although they always complain about the gas companies are in trouble, but not close the door. So here I will be much more careful with new investment, especially in generation. With regard to transmission, I think the good thing is that in this region we have these projects of common interest, investigations when you have a chance to very carefully maybe reduce the number of projects that might really pay back for the need to build. And I think that's not a bad approach. As I mentioned, I think the PCR list is still very big in big levels. And maybe invest much more into the demand.
Thank you very much. Well, this means that we will still have enough questions open, and we will try to solve them by the table, perhaps drinking palinka, and so on. Now, Europe and Russia. Can we foresee problems in the future between these two partners? What is your view of that?
our research show Russia has plenty of plenty of gas that is available for exports and at very competitive price. So Russia is really still interested in sustainable gas supplies to Europe. It is our main export market, and I think that it is no way that Russia will interrupt gas supplies to Europe. So yes, we are stable partners, and our relationship is based on effective economic cooperation.
Thank you very much.
Hvala lepa.
When it comes to gas, we see that it's been present since 1968. After being attached to the Austrian system, and I'm slightly embarrassed here because of the presence of my director, we do not really feel the problems in gas supply. Our assessments so far have always been very favorable. The supply has always been very stable. It was stable even in the critical times. So our assessments, also provided at the European level, has always been very favorable, and we think the Russian partner is a very stable partner. Thank you very much for your attention. We will have a break now. Unfortunately, it will have to be shorter than originally envisaged. So please do come back when you are called.